The story begins with your uncle Walter White, who is a father of a family made up of him, his wife Skylar, who is pregnant, congrats her, and their son Walter Jr. Your uncle Walter Jr. has a medical problem, which is speech difficulty, and he can't walk without crutches. On the second day it will be your uncle Walter White's birthday, his 50th birthday. And we see that they have money problems, and his son begins to complain because of these problems, and your uncle Walter goes to his job with his old car, which is barely working. You understand, I mean, it runs for a bit and takes a break for 5. He is now at work. A chemistry teacher in a high school and he doesn't have money? You are collecting a lot of money, I'm not jealous. And despite he is a smart teacher and loves his job, but the students keep making fun of him. Because he is a good and old man, but sometimes he finds someone not focused on his explanation while he is busy with a cat next to him, so he gets up him from his place and goes to another place. Keep your eyes on this kid, we will need him later. And he finishes and then leaves his job as a teacher and goes to his second job. He works at a car wash, and while he is washing a car, the boy he had exchanged his seat next to him and takes pictures of him and makes fun of him, and when Uncle Walter goes home he is surprised that all his family prepared him a birthday party, and here we will get to know Mary, Skylar's sister, and on her solid part, Hank. Hank is sitting with his friends playing with the rifles, and in the middle of the conversation they start to tease Uncle Walter White because they saw him. Weak person. Hank talks about his last mission. He arrested people dealing with meth type of drug. I wish I could tell you the owner's identity. The important thing is that Walter White has been surprised for the amount of money they took. On his second working day at the car wash, he faints and collapses. He is taken to the hospital, where he is shocked to learn he has lung cancer after being examined. May God protect us and you. At best with chemotherapy, he will live for 2 years. He works hard daily and comes home without mentioning his illness. I've noticed his primary worry is his family's future after he's gone. He was thinking about this in car wash. The owner comes over and annoys him, and since later was pissed off, he cusses him out and curses his damn eyebrows before walking away. That night, he calls his wife's brother-in-law Hanke, telling him he needs work and is ready to help him. At the next day, they embark on a crucial mission to arrest meth manufacturers. And there they see your Uncle Jesse running away. Jesse was a high school student with Walter, and at night, Walter goes to Jesse's place and they talk, and Walter says he wants to be Jesse's partner. And he conveniences him to cook methamphetamine and sell it, and of course, Jesse doesn't believe it. He was surprised. Walter threatens to turn him into the police if he's not made him his partner. He then goes to the school and takes chemical tools from the lab. He does this to start cook this drug, and Jesse refuses that they prepare the meth in his house, so they start thinking about another place. Where do we prepare it? Where do we prepare it? Oh my, Walter, where do we prepare it? Then they come up with an idea to work in a large van, one of those vans that people live in, and they decided to start tomorrow. On the same day, he goes with his family to buy his son some clothes, and there was one of Junior's friend who starts bullying him. Walter gets upset for the first time he hit that boy. The next day, he begins the journey with Jesse in the van. They brought it and went to the desert so they could be away from people's sight. So they can do their thing, and Walter changes his clothes so he wouldn't go home smelling like meth on his clothes, you understand. The factory is there and he starts working in the kitchen, wearing an apron, making the subject very easy to Walter because Walter is a chemistry professional. And Jesse is amazed when he sees the result. And because of its high quality as well, it's too much, and the next step is that to do something to sell the meth they made. So your Uncle Jesse goes to a person named Crazy. He presents to him Jesse's meth made by your Uncle Walter, and then there is a problem because this Crazy is an old partner of Jesse, and Jesse had told the police about him before. You know, he was getting bored, so he said, I will snitch on my friend. He told my friend, then Jesse took him and told him who made this meth for you, who is still working. And he goes to Walter, and Crazy proposes to him that Walter works for him. Walter refuses to cook meth for him. He almost kills him, but Walter tells him that he will teach him. But Crazy roped Jesse outside. They all come to learn from Walter. Then Walter makes an explosive substance instead of methamphetamine. He quickly escapes, locking them inside to choke on the smoke. He runs to Jesse, but he found him unconscious. And there is a bigger problem. When they hear a police car, they panic. Walter takes the car and runs away, records a farewell to his family, and stands with gun. Surprisingly, the sound is from fire truck, not police. Jesse was alive despite his swollen eye. When he is home, Skylar realizes he has changed last 2 days. The next day, while Uncle was awake, he had breakfast with his family. Jesse calls and he is upset, saying that Crazy is still alive, so Jesse is scared because he thought he was dead like his cousin. And Walter goes to school and is very upset until he finishes and takes from school lab. another materials. On his way to Jesse, he finds Crazy walking in the street as if he drugged. Because of his meth, he kidnaps him, then goes to Jesse's house. On the other hand, Skylar uses the number that Jesse called in the morning on the site, and she identifies the caller's identity, and she knows that the caller's name is Jesse. He knew Walter from school, and Walter would be with Jesse. Walter tied Jesse up by his neck in the basement, planning to leave Crazy while Jesse goes to buy a certain type of box so he can dissolve it in the body. What you are? Oh my god, and it must be a certain type, and Walter insisted that he bring that type. Then Walter went down to the basement so he can kill Crazy, and Crazy asks him to drink and eat. It's now hard on Walter, and he gives water to him. Walter sat alone, telling himself that he is a coward because he doesn't know how to kill him. And he found weed on Jesse's table, so he starts to smoke it. Jesse arrived, and he is surprised by the view. And Jesse says that he is not able to buy a box in the size you asked for it, so Walter says you could get two. Oh, stupid. Walter receives a call from his wife, so they reschedule their plan. At the hospital, she's pregnant. She had an ultrasound. She is having a girl. She's feeling blessed about the pregnancy. Skylar asked about Jesse, asking why he called. She claims everything was a lie and she thinks he cheated on her. Walter says he's buying some weed from him for anxiety. It's normal to buy weed. She told him that her brother works in drug enforcement. He was going to help him. Walter tells his wife to leave him alone. I'm still a free man. Anyway, Jesse went to Walter's house the next day after school to get rid of this Crazy, and before Walter arrives, Skylar goes and tells him to stop selling drugs to my husband.
Son of the...
Because my sister's husband is a drug enforcement officer who could arrest you, Jesse starts acting on his own stupidly. He starts breaking down Crazy's corpse, but he did the process in the bathtub instead of the special box Walter told him to use, and when Walter enters the apartment and smells something burning, he understands that Jesse has messed things up because he is a fool, and because of what Jesse did, he ends up on the bathroom ceiling and the bathtub collapsed. The substance he uses reacts with everything except plastic. You're stupid. In the desert, where Jesse and Walter cooked, there is two children start playing with gas canisters that fell from the van. Walter and Jesse start to clean up the disaster caused by his stupidity. Focus with me, because in the future you'll find out that Jesse is idiot, and he still hasn't finished dealing with Crazy. A conversation happens between Walter and Crazy, and he starts feeling sorry for him more and more. And Walter was arguing with Jesse for using the meth he produced. What are you doing? You're drinking the product, you're stupid, and he's arguing until Jesse tells Walter that he's going to bring the box until you're killing Crazy. Do it! Walter doesn't know what to do and can't bring himself to kill Crazy. Do you understand the situation now? By God, I swear this is not a criminal. Then he thinks he can handle such a sandwich, but while going down the stairs he got exhausted, then he fainted, then he drops the plate and broke it. When he woke up, he picked up the broken plate and he tells him, I'll make you another sandwich, don't worry. And he drops the broken plate in the trash and he replaces it with another sandwich. He sits and talks with him, opening a dialogue and beginning to sympathize more. Oh, uncle, kill him and spare us. You were coming, even your speech. As they continued talking, he started sympathizing with him more and more. Oh, please kill him. The conversation between them started getting longer. And Crazy talks about his father, and he talks to him until he decides that he will let Crazy go and not kill him. And he went out to get the key. After tossing what he was drinking, he stops because he feels something. He pulls out the broken dish and notices a missing piece that's not in the garbage. So it seemed like Crazy took it to kill him with it. And indeed he came out wanting to kill him, so Uncle Walter pulled him from the metal around his neck that out of fear, understanding that he was about to kill him and almost did until he killed Crazy and finally, thank God, and then Walter was shocked by what he had done. From this moment he lost the ability to trust anyone. On the other hand, Hank and the police arrive at the place where Walter used to work at the first time, because they were informed about the mask the children found. Which clearly means it belongs to a drug dealer, and Walter goes home after he left his house for a while. Because the shock that hit his mind and told Skylar he must tell her important news, and on the other hand, Hank and the drug enforcement police are continuing their investigation. There are new people who started manufacturing drugs and their arrest is imminent. We know it's Walter, but we will not say Walter and Hank's families gather together. In the midst of the conversation, Skylar suddenly crazed, and when her sister asks her what's wrong, she says, "What's wrong, sister?" Skylar asks Walter, who admits he has cancer. For the first time, they are aware of this, and after they talk, Hanks told him that no matter what happens, we won't give up. And I will take care of your family on Pool, and Jesse is at his house with his friends, drinking with them the meth that Walter did, oh great God. and he had hallucinations because of what he's deigned. And on the other hand, Skylar is preparing for her husband an appointment, a major doctor. She's trying to help him, and Jesse goes back to his parents' house who rejected him and don't really love him, especially since they are scared that Jesse is dealing with his younger brother and he might corrupt him, but he went to the bed. Jesse's parents aren't happy. However, when Jesse gets to his brother's room, he finds numerous awards, medals, and valuable scholarships due to his exceptional intelligence. His brother took all intelligence and left him nothing. But his mother intervenes and shows that she doesn't want Jesse to speak to his brothers. And on the other hand, Walter's door is knocking. And who is knocking? Jesse. Walter is very upset because he told him not to come to my house, but he went anyway. So stupid. Jesse says he knows people who enjoyed Walter's meth and wants him to keep working. Walter, after the crazy situation, decided not to work again. Go away and don't come here again. Jesse informs Walter that he sold some meth and gives him the money. Walter then visits his doctor, who discusses the symptoms he will experience as his condition progresses. In Jesse's house, his parents are talking to him after they discovered a marijuana joint that he intended to put hash in, and told him to leave the house. After he goes out, his younger brother comes to him and thanks him, revealing that the cigarette actually belonged to the small brother. What a bad family. The point is, even if Jesse is upset, he says it and returns to his place, and Walter refuses to get treated. He has to deal with it because the treatment will cost them a lot. $90,000? I mean, $90,000 in 5/16ths, it's really too much. Walter is trying to make it in his mind, and he probably doesn't want to be treated with chemotherapy and these things, and he wants to die peacefully. After facing a financial crisis, Jesse seeks a fresh start and applies to a company, leveraging his sales experience. After the interview, he is rejected due to lacking required certificates. Walter and his wife are invited to a friend's birthday who are very rich. Walter is embarrassed by the small gift he brought because his friends are wealthy and he is not. Walter was a partner in a small company with them, but left before it grew and the company succeeded. The birthday boy, Elliot, with his wife Gretchen, opens the gifts in front of everyone. A lot of very expensive gifts, but when it comes to Walter's cheap gift, it was just a packet of noodles. The situation turns embarrassing. Awkward. I mean, they sit after that and talk. Uncle Elliot, surprised intelligent Walter, is just a teacher and offers him a job at his company. But Walter refuses, saying he has personal issues and the subject is awkward, so Elliot offers to pay for his treatment and Walter and Skylar leave, and Walter is very upset because Skylar told Elliot that Walter has cancer and he's upset with himself. His former business partner, an old friend, feels sorry for him now. On the other hand, Jesse goes with one of his friends named Tress, and they try to do the same meth since Uncle Walter refused to come bake to be his partner, and they start working trying to replicate Walter's meth, but the result doesn't turn out to be similar to Walter's meth at all. Jesse, frustrated with their meth batch, insists on trying again. However, Uncle Trez gets upset due to Jesse's repeated mistakes and the costly waste of materials. Jesse takes a bag of the meth and leaves. Meanwhile, Walter's family tries to persuade him to seek treatment. However, after everyone shares their thoughts on his condition, Walter interrupts them, causing the tension to rise. He says he has decided to die peacefully instead of starting treatment, living with the pain of medication and being a burden on his family. The following day, he told Skylar that agrees to get the treatment to avoid upsetting them. They then go to the hospital. Then they get a phone call from the Elliot, but the person calling is Gretchen Elliot's wife, and she tells him that she knows about the cancer and offers to help. Here I want you to know that once upon a time, Walter and Gretchen were in love, but unfortunately, it didn't work out. After the call, Walter heads to Jesse and informs him that he's back to the business. He wants them to collaborate again, and they begin prepping the van. After Jesse damaged it, they agree. Walter will manufacture the drugs, Jesse will sell. Walter insists on no more killings no matter what. After Walter gets tired at one time, Jesse realizes that he has cancer in his lungs and that he is also in a late stage of fatigue. Jesse begins marketing to the public by distributing free samples to addicts who can purchase more if satisfied. Walter, displeased with Jesse's earnings, emphasizes the necessity of increased profits. We must sell in bulk to dealers. He realizes that the person who took Crazy's place is a man named Tuco, so Jesse is afraid to deal with Tuco because he is so dangerous he might get hurt. Walter tells him that he must be stronger. There's no other way, and this is the only way they can sell in large quantities. The next day, while Walter is at school, Hank comes to him and asks him about the equipment that Walter used, and the police arrive because the equipment was stolen from the school where he works. Walter, however, plays dumb and tells him he has never seen this equipment before in his life. He receives a call from Jesse, who informs him that
He's going to meet
a big dealer as Walter requested named Tokyo. Jesse goes with his friend. After searching, he enters to Tokyo. Tokyo responds seriously, telling him to leave the meth and money will send to you later. Jesse refuses, angering Tokyo, who tells him to bring the meth. No money for you, and he beat him up badly, oh so badly, and Walter's phone comes with what happened to Jesse, and he sees him beaten, and his condition is bad in the hospital. And on the same day, when Walter's hair began to fall due to chemotherapy, he decided to shave it all off, and he would go to Tokyo's place with a couple of meth, as if he was making a large amount of money, and he would enter the place and Tokyo would talk. When he asked him about his name, Walter said his name is Heisenberg. And he asks Tuco for $52,000 for the meth he took, and 15 because of the hit that Jesse took, so he embarrasses Tuco especially because he took a lot of meth. Walter holds a piece of meth and says, "Isn't meth," and throws it, causing an explosion. Frightened, Tuco gives him $50,000. Walter leaves victoriously and he reached an agreement. Walter makes meth every week and takes his payment and leaves. Walter pays Jesse, who is excited but suspicious of Walter's agreement with Tuco, which seems to involve a job after Tuco beat and replaced Jesse. "I'm upset because he hit me and you were going to agree with him." "Oh man, but your uncle Walter convinces him and they actually go at a different time and they meet Tuco in a remote place. But they bring him just a half pound of meth, but they come to the agreement that they will make 4 pounds every week." "Not 2, but you would ask me this pound is how much? I will tell you these 4 pounds are about 2 kilos unless the pound is about half a kilo." And Jesse and Walter start working to make this quantity. They will need specific materials, so they decide to steal from a large warehouse and they succeed, thank God and they work until the end of the week and it's the time for regular delivery. And when they meet Tuco, he found the meth is blue, he try it and he really like it. It's a good stuff. And Tuco's madness appears. When one of his men tells him, "Walter, we know that you are working for who?" "They know who I am," Tuco said. "You are insulting me behind my back, not to my face," and he beat him until he killed him. And Walter started calculating the money he needed to leave for his family. And after he calculated, he reached that he needed $730,000 to leave them for his family. Do you understand why? Will they enrichment the uranium or what? I don't understand. Before leaving, Tuco brings back the person who hit him. He stopped his breath. He wants them to take action, but the person is dying. Angered, Tuco hits the body. "How do you die, son?" After he leaves, Walter returns home and still stand, because of overthinking about the world around him. The next day, a very scared Walter goes to see Jesse, considering the danger. Due to their involvement with Tuco, who has now killed someone in their presence, Tuco might fear for his own safety since they are witnesses and could potentially kill them. Jesse wants to kill Tuco, but Walter is hesitant, especially because of Jesse's inability to open a gun. Hank keeps working in drug enforcement and wishes to continue his life in the fight against drugs to achieve their goals with the meth. Walter is afraid. From what Jesse said, especially when he went home and found a car is watching him, he go at the next day to Jesse and try to think with him how to kill Tuco. So they decide that they will make the poison and start working on it. By chance, Hank talks on the phone with Walter and he is on a mission that 2 people were killed, and Walter and Jesse find out that the 2 people are from Tuco's men who were standing when Tuco killed the person in front of them. So Walter quickly takes Jesse's gun to protect his family and goes to his house, but he finds them safe and he is scared because a car comes in front of his house, but he sees Jesse in the car. Jesse finds Tuco hiding in the closet behind him and asks him what he's doing there. He tells him to ride. Walter ride the car and start moving with it. At the same time, the police started noticed and catching Tuco and begin to follow him. Skyler reports Walter's surprising disappearance. On the other hand, after Tuco kidnaps Jesse and Walter, they take them to a deserted, confused place, have only one house in the desert, it's a tent, and with them an old man on a wheelchair, and there Tuco tells them that he is now a fugitive, so they will take him to Mexico, and there they will live in a fun environment and continue working. Walter refuses to leave his family. As they search for him, they decide to inform Hank. Hank questions Jesse about Walter and asks Jesse's mother about him. Walter tried to poison Tuco. The old man saw them and he belled the rang. Tuco took Jesse outside to find out what's happening inside. But Jesse quickly grabs a rock, hits Tokyo with it, makes the weapon fall, and Walter grabs it. But Jesse hits Tokyo in the stomach with a gun, leaving him bleeding to die, and they depart. They planned to steal a car to escape, but the keys didn't work. Hearing car voice, so they fled. Hank finds Tuco still alive. Minor disagreement happened between them. Hank kills Tokyo, thankfully. Walter and Jesse continue their journey in the desert until they find a car with some Mexicans in it, and when they reach the place, they leave Walter naked at the supermarket. They think this happens because he has a mental problem and he temporarily loses his memory to cover up his sudden disappearance, and indeed they take him to the hospital where he pretends to lost his memory. Because of the events, Jesse becomes paranoid and fearful whenever he sees a police car. He gives the car they work in to person to get rid of it, but in the end he catch up by Hanka and he arrested him. He was investigated because the car in which Jesse was kidnapped was there. He remains silent even when the old man from the houses came. They asked him if Jesse was at his house yesterday. The man doesn't answer due to some reason, so Jesse was released. Conversely, Walter only considers the money he will leaving to his wife for the uranium. The next day, your Uncle Walter leaves the hospital and returns home and meets Jesse afterwards, and they agree that they will not return to work until the world calms down around them. Jesse's family situation at the house is unknown. On the other hand, Walter discovers that his son Walter Jr. is letting his friends call him Flynn because he doesn't like his name after his father's name, which annoys Walter a lot. And also that Skylar, his wife, keeps leaving the house and don't tell him where she's going, which is annoying. At the same time that Jesse needs money because he doesn't have a house, so he goes to stay with one of his friends, but his friend refuses because he has a family, so he called a lot of his friends and without result, so he is forced to go to the place where they put the car and he enters in secret and sleeps there. Another day, Walter tries to get closer to his son and takes him out and trains him on drive. Another day when the man who took the car. So Jesse, he kicked him out, but Jesse was able to steal the car, thanks God. And on the other side, Walter and Skylar have problems between them, and this has happened because that Skylar saw that Walter was hiding something from her and he don't want to say, and she can't handle this anymore, but Uncle Walter get upset. He gets more upset when he meets Jesse, and the meth car came in front of his house, so he goes to him, he is upset, and Jesse says he wants his money, but Walter. Words were sharp, and he told him to do something other than causing problems. He angrily insults Jesse, calling him stupid. Jesse gets upset and they fight. After calming down, he gives Jesse his money. Despite being pregnant, Skylar smokes a cigarette outside due to her problems. Jesse took his money, then went to rent an apartment from Jim's, the owner's daughter. Afterwards, Jesse left. Jesse and Walter in the car in the desert on the border between America and Mexico. And the work begins. But Jesse doesn't understand. Why are they working and making the meth? And since they don't know how to sell it, Jesse thought they were taking Tuco's place and doing it. Network sells drugs. You're getting in too deep, and indeed Jesse starts with some of his friends and selling a little meth like this for some people. Walter gets his money. On the same day, a second dispute occurs between Skylar and Walter because he discovers she has been secretly smoking cigarettes behind his back, which deeply upsets him. And Jesse goes with a gun because some addicts kidnapped one of his friends who used to sell them drugs, and there the place was messy. Of course, it's a drug addict's house. Amidst the mess, a small child was there, the son of two addicts who kidnapped Jesse's friend, and Jesse is really upset about the child and prefers to play with him until his parents get home. So Jesse stands them up with the gun, and he starts to threaten them to get the drug money they stole, but in the end, they threats Jesse himself. The man struggling with his wife, the ATM machine they stole falls, and he tried to open it, but it suddenly opened. Jesse takes the money from the open machine and leaves. Walter notices Jesse's absence. He went to his apartment, but no one opens. When Jan, the manager of the place, comes, and when she asks him, "Who are you?" he tells her that he is Jesse Jackson's father, meaning his name is Jesse Jackson, and he asks her to open the door for him and let him in, but Jesse opens the door and lets him in and talks to him. And depression was the reason for Jesse's disappearance. He experienced when he was with the two destructive addicts. Skylar goes to meet an old friend named Ted, who turns out to be the owner of a large company. She goes to him with the intention of getting a job, and indeed, she get employed. On the other hand, Walter plans to hire all the small drug dealers in the city so they can distribute for him, especially the competitors among the drug dealers have reached them that Jesse has placed an automated teller machine on the addict since he bites him, which is a good matter regarding Walter because his competitors are afraid of him and they want to align themselves with him. It's a big risk. And when Skylar's sister is upset that she's going back to work because she's been harassed by 10, she stays away from him. What a beautiful time of harassment this is. Also, her husband was not happy that she's pregnant and doesn't be able to work hard, but Skylar knows Walter that she wants work, but he's still objecting. But Skylar is determined and she's going to work despite his objections. While on a mission at the Mexican border, Hank encounters a severed head on a tortoise. Shocked, he steps back just as the head explodes, killing and injuring his colleagues, but leaving Hank unharmed. It's unclear why he remains unharmed. Jesse went and told his friend that they need more of a drug dealers, and at Skylar's work, Ted insists on having lunch with her and tells her that he will decide when to meet again. On the other hand, in Jesse's apartment, he starts talking more with Jane, the manager of the place, and tells her that he bought a TV and invites her to come watch with him, but the screen doesn't work. While he's waiting for it to work, Jane's hand is held.
Jesse, and he gets, oh no.
This is at the same time one of Jesse's friends was arrested because the officer pretended he's buying drugs. And he took the advantage of the opportunity and arrested Jesse's foolish friend. Of course, he is foolish as his friend. Hank, mentally exhausted due to witnessing the events and what happened to his friends. Walter would attempt to improve his mood and Hank returned to work, but he was not completely healed. On the other hand, Jesse and Walter go to a lawyer named Saul Goodman. And he goes to him as a consultant to get Jesse's friend out, so the lawyer says that he is supposed to confess to drug dealers. Those employ him and then he will out, and of course those who are employed him are Jesse and Walter. Of course this solution is not suitable. So at night Jesse and Walter kidnap the lawyer and they put him in front of a pit to scare him and threaten him with guns. The agreement was that he gets the guy out of jail without making any deals with the drug enforcement police. But when Walter coughs, Saul recognizes them because he had cough at the morning in his office, a smart lawyer, and he tells them that he will help them. The plan would be for them to pay someone to pretend to be Heisenberg and go to jail. And by this way, the guy would get out. They execute the plan and it works, but Hank has a feeling that something is wrong. On the same day, the lawyer goes to Walter and offers to work for him in the meth business and do all the legal transactions in exchange for a part of the money. Jesse continues his relationship with Jane and they begin to fall in love with each other, considering living together without any restrictions or obligations. On this day, Walter contacts Jesse and tells him that they need to start producing large quantities of meth, so that Walter says he has traveled to visit his mother. But in reality, he goes with Jesse. They start working and produce large quantities. They are very happy because these quantities will earn them a lot of money. But suddenly, while in the middle of the desert, the car stops due to dead batteries, a careless mistake from Jesse. As usual, Jesse tries to fix it manually, but the car caught fire because Jesse is doing it wrong and they don't know what to do. They decide to stay there until night falls and the weather gets cold. What a bad luck. Cold, I mean very cold. On the second day, Walter tries to work on the battery. They spend the entire day trying until he becomes exhausted because he did not take his medication and choose to remain in despair. Suddenly, they have an idea and use chemical materials to get a car working. They return as Walter has a doctor's appointment where he finds out his condition has improved and the tumor has shrunk by 80%. And they all become happy. There is hope, and a great hope that he will recover, and one day Walter will ask Jesse to meet him, and he said that they will sell the chemicals they made, and after that he will stop because he is getting better, Walter at this day. While doing some repairs in the house, he makes a hole to hide the money in, then he goes to the supermarket to get things for home repair. He notices someone purchasing supplies to make meth, so he goes to him and told him firmly, "Stay away from the area where I sell." Oh, he is a real drug dealer, and because of the tone he spoke with, Walter scared them, feeling happy because he is now a strong player, unlike before when he used to be scared. And another day, one of Jesse's friends gets killed by a young boy who shot him, so Jesse calls Walter. And they go to the lawyer Saul to see what they can do about these problems, and there Saul tells them that they need to deal with a distributor he knows who is described as a businessman who only sells abroad with large amounts. He's been in this field for 20 years without being caught. And he arranges a meeting with him, and the next day he goes and Walter meets the man Saul told them about in a Mexican restaurant. His name is Los Polos, I hope I said the name right, but Jesse comes late and they keep waiting for the man because they don't know his name or even his shape, but because of the waiting, Jesse gets annoyed and decides to leave and go home. He finds Jane drinking drugs from his own stash because she was addicted, actually. Walter called Saul and told him that he has gone and did not meet this mysterious man, so Saul tells him that this means he has arrived. He saw them from afar, but he decided that he does not want to work with them. Oh, what a charismatic man. But he goes to the restaurant again and he prefers to wait until night falls and everyone in the restaurant leaves and Walter is still there, so Walter goes to the manager of the place. He tells him that he needs 5 minutes of his time, and when he sits with him, Walter asks him, "Why did you refuse to meet me yesterday?" The person doesn't understand, but your Uncle Walter tells him that I am yesterday. I was waiting for a person, and I believes this person is you. Until then, man says that we are different. I'm a cautious person. Your partner arrived late and he was high, so no way we can work together. The man is charismatic, but your uncle prefers convincing. Walter convinces him to ask the person about the quantity he has. When asked, the person stands up and Walter tells him that he has the person's phone numbers. On the other hand, Jesse and Jane are taking drugs together instead of fixing her, and here Jill gives Jesse a drug pipe for the first time, so your Uncle Jesse feels a great thrill, because this is the first time he tries this drug at all. These sweet things shouldn't be done as it's harmful to health. I advise trying it at home. The next day, your Uncle Walter receives a message with the restaurant's name where he met the person, signaling agreement. Walter goes to the restaurant and meets someone following the trader from yesterday's meeting. And he knows his name is Jess, or Jess. He offers him $1 million in exchange for the meth he has, and he tells him an address, and he tells him that he must be there within less than an hour, or they will consider him not with them. So he quickly gets in his car and calls Jesse to tell him to prepare the meth as soon as possible, but Jesse doesn't respond and he goes to his house very quickly. He breaks the door with his shoulder after finding it locked. It's $1 million. You can't imagine you'll buy £1,700,000. He found him drugged, but he says the place of the meth and it's under the shower, and Walter quickly takes the meth. But he receives a message from his wife telling him that she is giving birth. Oh world, this is $1 million, or your wife who is naturally giving birth? Of course $1 million. He couldn't go because he's short time to deliver the meth. He runs in a car to deliver the package as told and takes the payment. He gets a call from his wife to go to the hospital, and there he finds out that Skylar was the one who got her to the hospital and was with her all the time. Keep in mind, my son, women can really stand up to this, and your uncle will go home and hide the $1 million he took. I still have $1. I still have $1,000 for anything. When your Uncle Jesse wakes up, he finds the door broken and the meth missing, unaware that it was Walter, because he was drugged. And on the other hand, Walter knows that his son made a page for donations, and he became upset, and your uncle is going to the lawyer. So he want to know how to wash the money he has. Do you understand? It's very normal. Just put them in the washing machine. He launders money and asks where the money come from. So he has to start a project and put the money in it so that the money remains. I'm sure he brought it from somewhere, and so on. So the general idea is that they make it seem like this money came to him through donations he received in a way that he is donating to himself. Oh, smart, oh boy. On the other hand, it's Jesse and Jane are about to take another hit of drugs and suddenly get caught by Jan's father, and Jesse gets hit. And told Jane she's going with him right now to the rehab center, but they're insisting that she goes with him to the rehab center tomorrow. I will take the drug now and go tomorrow. And Walter Trey's arrive again answers and tell him that Jesse wants his money because Jesse has already told her everything, but he refuses. He won't give him any money because he knows it will be spent on drugs, and says he won't give him any money unless he agrees to stop. But Jane says that if he doesn't give him the money, she will call the police, so Walter decides to give Jesse the money. Upon arriving, Jane opens the door and Walter hands the money to Jesse. Before Walter can speak, Jane closes the door, leaving her and Jesse happy with the money. They plan to run away with the money before her father arrives the next morning. Walter unknowingly meets Jane's father, but they don't recognize each other. After their conversation, Walter returns to Jesse's house through the back door, finding them both unconscious from drug use. Suddenly, Jane starts to choke rapidly due to the excessive dose she took, which she administered herself. She falls onto her back overdosing. Walter is capable of saving her, but he chooses to let her die. He's not a good man. In the morning, Jesse discovers her and he's shocked he cannot revive her. He chooses to remember her as she was his true love. He called Walter to help him, so he sends a man named Mike to clean the place of any drug traces to keep Jesse indebted and under control. Meanwhile, Walt's son is overjoyed due to receiving numerous donations, which are actually from Walt himself. He feels relieved, planning to donate the money to others under the guise of donations. Later, Walter discovers that Jesse visited a drug den, so he goes there and retrieves him, finding Jesse in a state of deep despair. He is the only reason for losing Jane because he prefers to have drugs with her, and takes him to a place to calm him down and says that he left his share of the money with the lawyer. When Walter returns home, he discovers a TV channel interviewing his family because Junior's website has garnered significant attention, particularly after receiving a substantial amount of money and donations. Walter has surgery to remove his tumor. Afterward, he discovers that Skylar took their children away from him due to the stress, and she will be at her sister's home. And they say she doesn't want to see him again, and when he asks her why, she tells him it's because you're Layer, and she has discovered that he has another phone he uses for secret calls, and she knew this when he said it while he was sedated before the surgery, so she thinks he's deceiving her. And she called his mother and discovered he didn't travel to her, indeed a deceitful man. And your Aunt Skylar leaves the house, and he sits alone in the house after his wife left him, and by chance, an airplane explosion over the area. Your Uncle Walter sits in it, oh poor man, and this was due to a mistake by someone in the airline's control tower, and this person Jan's father. Your Uncle Jesse's died girlfriend due to his grief over his daughter's passing. You understand the interconnectedness of events. Meanwhile, Jesse started recovering from the shock at the place that your Uncle Walter sent him to, and one day he comes to your Uncle Walter. A message from Paul's restaurant owner. He is a major drug dealer, so they understand from the message that he is supposed to go to him because he wants him. And one day suddenly the door knocked and your Uncle Walter opens it to find Skylar. After she left the house like when we saw her, and she asks him to talk, and when they said she asks him for a divorce, but Walter insists that he loves her and does not want to divorce her. And she collide him that she knew he was a drug dealer, and this is because she saw the money before and linked all the events and was convinced of what he was saying. And here for the first time Walter honestly tells her and admits that he was the one who was manufacturing and selling drugs. And she tells him that she will not tell Hank and their son this secret, but he must divorce her, and Walter goes to Jesse after he recovers from drugs. And here we see a completely different Jesse after your Aunt Jane, God rest her soul, died. And then he goes to a restaurant called Los Polos and meet for Gus and makes an offer to him. But before he says anything, Walter says that he does not want to continue working and tries to justify his reasons, but Gus tells him that he also wants to offer his offer again, and then you can refuses or agree, and the offer is $3 million for 3 months of work, and then he can retire. A lot of money. I can do this even if it took extra months of work I'm in. Despite the enticing money, your Uncle Walter refuses because he is too sad to lose his family for wealth. On his way back, police stopped him and ask, "Why is your glass broken?" Walter says the reason is that his car was damaged due to the explosion that happened over his house. When the officer provokes Walter, he becomes enraged and refuses to calm down, leading to his arrest by the officer, thankfully. At the same time, Jesse goes to his parents' house and sees that it is for sale. And on the other hand, Walter gets out of prison because his relative Hanks is an officer. And on this day, Walter's surprised. That's Saul the lawyer asking him to return to work. Walter refuses, not wanting to be the bad guy. He then gets a call from your Uncle Mike. If you forgot, he is the person Saul sent to Jesse to erasing traces that could incriminate Jesse, and Saul says that Walter's wife was worried and she stopped the work and they need to monitor her, and in your Uncle Hanks's house there is Hank, Skylar and his son are still at their sister's house, and your Uncle Walter Jr. is very upset for his mother because he sees that she is the cause of the problems and she is aimless. Lefty's father and his condition does not let him go and tells her, if you do not love him and you would leave him, I still love him, have mercy. Now at the lawyer's office, and Jesse is coming to him and he takes $500,000, his share of the work that Walter left him with Saul. When Jesse went to the sanatorium, and after taking the money, he tells Saul he wants a job and he wants to buy his house from the sellers, Jesse's father and mother, and his house was sold successfully. At the same time, Walter goes to his house after Skylar took it, bringing her a big pizza to fix it with her, but she kicks him out, so he stays and later throws the pizza on the roof of the house. In the famous scene. Jesse's parents are startled when he suddenly enters their house. They ask him, "What are you doing here, son?" "We are waiting for the house buyer," he said. "I am the buyer." And we see that your Uncle Mike is watching Skylar and Junior, waiting for them to leave the house and go put surveillance equipment in the place. Meanwhile, Uncle Walter enters the house with a bag. He deposits his money inside and then takes a shower to freshen up. But suddenly we see that there are two people standing in front of the house. They get out of the car and enter. They wait in the house and then they wait. Walter to kill him because a Mexican gang wants to kill Walter for monopolizing the market, but Gus receives the news at the last moment. Because Mick put a surveillance device in the house, he contacts them and stops their plan, causing them to back off. When Walter realizes something is wrong, because something is out of place, he doesn't know that he was on the verge of possibly being killed in the most brutal way. He waits for your Aunt Skylar's arrival. When she does, he talks to her over the phone, wanting to explain, but she refuses to stay long. He is upset, but he says he won't leave the house because he has a right to it just like she does, and it's his house too. When she gets stubborn, she tells him that if he doesn't leave, she'll get the police involved and she'll tell them he's a drug dealer. So he tells her the phone is in front of you, do what you want, mom, nobody's stopping you. So she actually calls and reports that there's a home invasion. When the officer arrives, he informs her that the husband has a right to be in the house since they are not divorced yet, and it is not considered a home invasion. When Junior sees the police at his father's house, he becomes very upset and starts to argue with his mother, telling the officers that his father is a good man and hasn't done anything wrong. She insists to leave and the police eventually do, leaving Walter in his home. On the other hand, Jesse goes to Jesse's lawyer and asks him to convince Walter to return to work. Jesse is consumed by thoughts of his dead girlfriend, whom he misses terribly. He then goes to Mexico, where Walter's would-be killer is located. He brings along an elderly drug addicted from his house named Hector Salamanca. They meet Gas and tell him to stay away from Heisenberg or Walter White because they need him, and we realize that the man who was going to kill him is still close to him. May God burn them and their family. The Mexican drug dealers seek revenge against Walter. On the other hand, Walter tries overtime to make Skyler understand why he did what he did and tries to be a good guy. But despite this, Skyler is still at work. She gets ready for Uncle Ted's, her manager, goes home with him to play backgammon with him, and later finds Uncle Walter making her dinner. She tells Walter about playing backgammon with Ted, causing Walter to feel wronged by her shameless and exposed behavior. Jesse. He began a small business selling small samples to customers. Simultaneously, Walter went to Uncle Company, owned by Ted, and became very upset when they refused his entry. And he started breaking the place on their heads. Mike takes your Uncle Walter in a car. So they can understand him after they heard everything that happened with the spying they were doing, and for their own good, Walter doesn't get any trouble like arrest. Because they need him to make drugs for them, but he gets very stubborn, and Walter, when he finds out they're watching him, he hits Soul. And he says he doesn't want to be involved with them again, and takes Mike with him to remove the listening devices. Oh, his name is Mike, and he sets up microphones for him. And we see that Skyler goes to play a table challenge with her manager after work, and more than once she is interested in this subject. Approximately at the same day after he returns from his work at the school, he harasses a teacher at the school. So what is this? In the name of God, is he still harassed? Walter meets Jesse and asks to talk, but they disagree because Walter refuses to return to the job. Jesse says he'll work alone and go to your Uncle Saul to discuss Gus. The news reaches Gus, who is reluctant since he doesn't work with addicts, but agrees upon knowing that Jesse has separated from Walter. Indeed, Uncle Jesse. Sold quantity to him, he took half the amount and told him that we would pay the other half to Walter. Indeed, while Walter was driving, someone passed by his side and gave him money. Uncle Walter calls Jesse, tell him he is not entitled to half of this money, but he tells Walter that this is his composition and he has the right to it, and Walter goes to Gus and tells him, "Why did you give me this money?" Suddenly, Gus asks him to come with him to a meeting. Gus takes him to a large clothing store. And through a specific path, Walter found himself in a manufacturing laboratory full of large quantities of materials, but despite the place impressing Walter, he refuses the second offer, and on the other hand, Hank was upset because he doesn't know how to reach Heisenberg, and because of this he had problems at work and considered him as a failure. Saul asks Walter to come to his office to resolve issues between Walter and Jesse. Saul tries to convince them about profit sharing, but Walter returns Gus's money, telling Jesse that this is the last amount he will make from this job because he is going to work with Gus but alone. Walter warns Jesse of his product. Jesse goes outside and breaks Walter's car's window because he is nervous. "You do this to me. Oh, this is expensive, and now let's go to your uncle." Walter buys a new apartment for work, but his partnership with Gus, as we see, it's a washer. But everyone in it knows that he is a lab for the meth. It includes drugs, and when Walter goes, there will be a person named Gail, and this person will be Walter's new assistant after Jesse, and who will be a very smart person. His experience is great in large universities in chemistry, and they start working professionally, and Hank will be a continuation of his investigation, and it turns out that your Uncle Jesse works in selling meth through a truck he uses as a lab, and he starts searching for this truck because it is the strong guide. Hank contacts Walter and asks him if he knew Jesse had a truck or not, because he realizes that Walter has bought marijuana from Jesse, so suddenly Walter calls Saul to help them because they're in a big problem. And they need to destroy a car, so they go to the place where the car is because Jesse left it there and he is going to destroy it, but Jesse comes and he is upset that Uncle Walter is going to destroy it. But this becomes a peak of stupidity because Jesse is afraid of Hank, and indeed he goes behind him and locks windows quickly. Walter ignites the car and he stays inside, and Uncle Hank is outside, and Hank tries to open the door, but Jesse starts talking to him from inside, words from Walter as "you must have a search warrant because it's not just a car." And they sit and think about what they will do if the situation gets worse. So Walter called the soul, and Hank is told his wife had an accident, so he must go to her. When he finds out she's fine, he gets very upset, and it becomes a personal matter but can't resolve it. Walter and Jesse were on the verge of destroying the car. The same day, twin with the cartel's gang, they attempted to kill Uncle Walter because he killed Tuco, and they are going to meet Gas, who they say that who killed Tuco. Is Hank Schrader becomes a target for assassination. On the same day, Hank goes to Jesse's house and brutally beats him, disfiguring his face. Jesse is hospitalized and Hank gets suspended from work. He turns to investigate due to his actions. And on the same day, and because he doesn't want his assistant to be near to him, even though he is very smart, but he wants Jesse to work with him. Walter went to Jesse and tells him he needs him. However, he's angry because he's always the one who pays for mistakes. But after he calms down, he tells him that the profit will be divided in half and that he must return him again. Walter's approve. On the other side, the investigation with Hank started. He pauses from work and hands over his badge and gun. On his way, the twins attack him, but he runs over one of them. Although he has been shot multiple times, he is wearing a bulletproof vest. He goes to get the axe to hit him, but Hank quickly shot him in the middle of the head, and on the other hand, Uncle Walter refuses. Gale, despite being an excellent chemist, and he see that there is no spirit between them as much as fine not feeling, but Gale really shocked. When he sees Jesse and realizes that he will take his place, I am relapsed and you brings this son of a... And when Walter knew he gets to Hank, he leaves work and goes to the hospital quickly, and then someone tells Hank that the owner of Los Pollos restaurant is coming by himself to give them food because he knows what happened to Hank, and when he comes we see that he is a very bad person. He kept comforting Mary, Hank's wife, despite the fact that he was the reason of what happened. Walter continues his work with Jesse, and they manufacture hundreds of drugs. Your Uncle Walter goes to meet Gus, and they agree to work together for $15 million a year, and when your Uncle Walter goes to work the next day, Walter is discovered. A fly in the lab, and it will cause many problems, polluting the environment and chemical materials. The staff spent the entire day chasing the fly around the lab as it caused numerous issues. On the other hand, we see Hank's condition, who started taking natural treatment because he can't walk, and we see that his mental state is getting worse and worse. And your Uncle Jesse begins to help his friend trying to sell meth to people who are recovering from addiction, and he meets a girl named Andrea with the aim of selling her the meth. Andrea, we will need her later, just stay with me. After meeting Andrea, he actually leaves and returns to your uncle's Walter house, and later on we will see that Skylar begins to have a desire to spend the money that Walter has accumulated from the meth, especially to help her sister's husband Hank with his treatment. But they say they must wash this money first, meaning that when anyone asks them about the source of this money, they must know what will be the answer. There is no teacher have all these amounts except in Egypt. Loyalty. So do they go with him to Seoul to see what they will do? On the other hand, Jesse goes with a girl named Andrea to sell her meth under the name of being her boyfriend, and he goes home with her. And we know that she is Mexican, living with her son Brock, a single mother, and also living with her grandmother. And back to your Uncle Walter. He is considering buying a car wash in front of the government, which would be his source of income. Which car wash he will buy? Yes, who used to work at Iwachi's, the car wash where the man who annoying him and extinguished cigarettes on his back. On the same day, while Walter and Jesse were working in the lab, Walter have a call from Gus. He invites him to his house, and when he goes, Gus tells him that he has invited him for dinner. He talks to him, and Gus tells Walter that never makes the same mistake again, I swear to God. On the other hand, while Jesse is with Andrea, he finds out that she has a younger brother, but he was used by a small drug dealer to deliver them. And this child remains the child who killed Combo, the Jesse's friend, and when Jesse goes and pretended that he is buying, he knew that they are selling his meth for he and Walter, so he goes to meet Walter and tells him everything. Because Jesse doesn't like that the dealers are using children in this, and Jesse is determined that he kill the other two dealers who employ children. And when Gus arrives, who wants to work for him Jesse, Mike bring Jesse. And he sits with the dealers he wants to kill, and he tells them that these are my employees and he doesn't want troubles. And he tells the other two that employing children is prohibited. And it's end. But he doesn't really end to Jesse because he is a big donkey, because at this day Jesse receives the news of Thomas's death. He becomes angry and he grabs the gun and go to kill the two men, and before they can kill him, or he kills them. Walter hit them with his car. One of them died and the other was shot by Walter with his gun. He says to Jesse, run. After the incident, Gus gets angry and waits until Walter meets Gus and told him. He was angry and he told him that Jesse was fired and that he would appoint a new assistant for him, and Jay returned to work again, and while he was at home, Gas visits him. He asked him about if he can manage the lab alone. The man responds that he is skilled and knowledgeable but requires 2 more days to learn further. And Walter meets Jesse in secret, but he tells him that Jazz is planning that, when he knows the description, he kills them and replaces them with Jail, so they need to kill Jail so that Gas needs them. But Jesse does not agree with that idea. And he says Walter should go tell the police about Gas and finish him, but Uncle Walter is going to kill Jail. But the problem is that he doesn't know his address or any information about him. Jesse is following Jail and knows his address. But when Walter leaves his house to kill Jail, one of Gas's men comes. And he takes him with him and goes to the lab, and there they ask him to call Jesse so they can know his location and kill him. So he calls him, but very quickly, and he says to him to run away and kill Jail before they get to him or they will kill him, and he runs there. And before they kill him, Walter tells them Jail's address. So they make sure that Jesse is going to kill him whatever they need him, so it's not worth killing him. Jail's door knocked. Jill opens the door to find the gun in Jesse's hand, and Jesse cries because for the first. He kills an innocent person to save Walter. He's not innocent. I mean, he's dealing drugs and he kills Jail, and after that happens, he goes to one of Gus's assistants and kidnaps Jesse and goes to the lab, and there he gets a call from Mike to Gus to come and deal with the situation himself. And at the same time, Skylar looking for Walter, she's asked a lawyer Saul to ask about him. Gas finally arrives and is very upset, but calmly, I don't understand how, and while your Uncle Walter is conducting an operation, he goes to wear the lab coat. To express his anger, he kills his assistant in front of them with a box cutter. It's not Walter who does that, it's Gus, and says nothing else, only get ready to go back to work, just that. At day's end, Jill had left his notebook with his name. Lab notes, Walter goes to buy a gun from the black market to protect himself in case anything else happens. On the other hand, Jesse, who hasn't been well since Gail's murder, begins to return to drugs. As for your Uncle Walter, Skylar called him because she wants to finish the procedures of buying their own washer, and eventually they lose the money and pay Hank's bill that was imposed on them. When Walter tries to go and kill Gus, he gets a phone call telling him to return home immediately so he doesn't get killed, and Skylar at the next day meets the owner of the washer, who demands $10 million because she is wife of Walter White, whom don't love him. On the other hand, Walter goes to Mike to tell him that they are both in danger because Gus, like he killed the second assistant, he will kill us. Walter asks Mike to lead them together and he will manage the issue, but Mike, despite feeling a bit of danger, he hits Walter. At the following day, Walter finds a new camera system at the lab. And after what happened when Skylar went to buy the car wash, they talk to Saul to resolve this issue and Saul can handle it. He sent a man says that the car wash's water is contaminated and they need to change their system, which will cost the man a $200,000, and he offered to sell the car washer instead of losing money on it. One day, a colleague of Hank visits him at home after he was very upset. His colleague tells him that they are close to solving a drug dealer's puzzle. They found a notebook of observations in Gail's apartment and they suspect that it was Heisenberg's. He gives Hank a copy of the notebook in case he needs it. Skylar receives a call from the car wash owner offering to sell it with a discount. The next day, Walter, Skylar, and their son visit Hank and Marie. Skylar told him a fake story. Walter was previously addicted while he was ill, and he made a lot of money from it. They now have a lot of money and they will use it to help Hank. Here, Walter is looking at the notebook they took from Gail's house, and he tells Walter that he believes Gail was Heisenberg. So Walter goes to Jesse's house after he finds out that the police are investigating who killed Gail. Walter finds Jesse high, turning his house into a disco. Unwanted to talk, Jesse kicks Walter out. Walter then goes to his lawyer Saul, after he tells him all the problems he's in. That there's a guy who knows how to disappear people for a fee, giving them a new identity without leaving any trace. But Walter and Jesse keep working, knowing they're being watched and could die at any moment. If this man could get rid of them. And when Jesse goes to sleep, he finds Mike waiting for him, and there's no one in the house because he kicked them out. Then Mike goes to Gus and tells him that Jesse is acting impulsively and we need to deal with him. The next day at work, Walter notices Jesse's absence. He visits Jesse's house, finding his phone but not Jesse himself. In reality, Mike had taken Jesse from his home. And despite this, Walter doesn't know. And he thinks Jesse has been kidnapped to be killed, so he goes to look for him and leaves a message for Skylar that he loves her because he thinks he's also going to die in this matter. He visits Gus's restaurant and waits for him, but receives a call from Mike telling him Jesse is with him. On the same day, Skylar receives Walter's late message while they are together, causing a tense moment, and they played table together. The next day, they visit Hank's house for dinner. Walter drinks a lot of alcohol. When Hank hears Gil is genius, he loses control and insists that Gil must be the one who copies down all the notes from a person how is really genius. So Hank goes back to investigate the matter further, and he reached something. Gale was a vegetarian, and he had a Los Pollos Hermanos napkin, which is for gas. The day after the previous events on Hank's home, Skylar was panicked about Walter, fearing he might end up in jail or be killed like Gale. She insists that he is in danger, but he dismisses her with a very stern tone, telling her that he is the danger. And I'm not the guy who gets the door knocked to find a gun pointed at him because I'm always the one who knocks and enters. He gets shower when he goes out and doesn't find Skylar and Walter and finishes the procedure for purchasing the laundromat and comes back upset. Unable to find Skylar, he takes his son to a car dealership instead of school and buys him a car. Skylar is shocked to find the car when she returns home, because there is no way a teacher would buy a car like this for his son, so they must sell the car. Walter destroys the car by driving it recklessly in the street and setting it on fire after declaring, "I'll destroy it." Throw the money away, and the next day Walter goes with a small amount of a poison substance. In case something happened, and to hide it, he puts it in. He places the cigarette in his pack, Walter warning not to confuse it for a regular one to avoid smoking it by accident. On the other hand, Hank is sitting on the drug enforcement forces. He is suspicious of Gus after connecting many dots, especially that fingerprints were found in Gale's apartment. During the investigation, Gus was summoned and acted innocent. Who is Gale? Who, man? And he explains presence of his fingerprints in Gale's apartment. That he was worked in a chemistry scholarship for 15 years. Gale and he met on a scholarship. After Gale graduated, they didn't meet again until 2 weeks before his death when he met him by coincidence. Gale's invited him over and he visited him. He released with no charges, and there's insufficient evidence that he manufactures the drugs or employs Gale. But one day Hank go with Walter to get him to some place, but in car, Hank tells Walter that he is going to a Gus restaurant, and here he talks to him about Gus and that he is very suspicious of him and asks him to put an eavesdropping device on Gus's car. So he pretended that he is holding the device and enters the restaurant and talks to Gus and tells him about the eavesdropping device and that he did not put it on his car. Gus tells him to put it on car, so he does properly this time and they walk away. Walter rushes to Jesse's house, insisting they must kill Gus, fearing that if Hank is investigating Gus, he will surely be killed. And the thing that Hank remains suspicious about is Gus's mysterious past. He doesn't know that I'm going to tell you because I'm a good man, sir. Once upon a time, Gus and his brother, the world chemist from Mexico, met with Hector Salamanca and the drug dealer to work in drug cell, and because of a small mistake, Gus's brother was shot in the head in front of his brother. Did you see the picture? We return to the present, and after Hank watches Gus, he doesn't do anything other than going home and to the restaurant. And on the other side, in the laundry that Uncle Walter bought, Ted comes to Skylar there. You understand what he was playing with her so much, and her summonses came from the tax authority, and because of it, his company is closed, and he asks her to help him because she's a smart accountant and can solve this. On this night, Jesse goes to Gus's house, waiting for an opportunity to kill him and get rid of his mother. Gus was the one invited, and he asks him, can you make Walter's meth formula? This is because there are differences between him and the Mexican cartel gang, and they want his meth set up. So he wants to send Jesse there to show them how to make the meth. And Jesse tells that to Walter when he leaves, but Jesse lies and tells him, I knew this, but I didn't meet Gus. But Walter gets angry because he knows he meet Gus, and this is because he put a bugging device on Jesse's car, and he gets more angry when he finds out that Jesse was there and couldn't kill the Gus. And they hit each other. On the other hand, Skylar sent Ted to Sol so he could deal with him about the taxes that would imprison him, and when he tells him that he has money, Sol told him that he inherited an amount, the same amount as his taxes from a distant relative. In reality, this is the money Skylar gave to Sol to give to Ted. I mean, listen, Skylar gave the money to Sol to give it to Ted, who said this is enough money to cover his tax debts, but this money is from the distant relatives. As for your Uncle Jesse, he goes with Gus and Mike to Mexico, and there they show them how they work, and at the same time Junior goes to his father's apartment, and there he finds him hit, and Walter justified to him that he had a fight and starts crying until he faints. Meanwhile, in Mexico, they are impressed with Jesse's results. Elsewhere, Skylar visits Ted and admits that she paid made the money. As for Jesse and Gus, Gus meets the cartel boss's gang. And those who were the same people who killed his brother a long time ago, and in the same place he kills all of them, thank God, but he gets poisoned himself with them. Gus went to a place that was prepared for it so he could get treated quickly before he died. And here we will see that Gus had prepared for himself blood transfusions and many other things in case anything happens to him. And then when Gus stands up and goes to Salamanca in the nursing home and tells him that they were all old colleagues and all his relatives were killed by his hand. The following day, Hank questions Walter to give him a ride. Hank starts to describe the road while he says that he knows Gus has prepared a laundry lab and they must go. Walter knows Hank would discover it if they went. An intentional incident that they both get injured. And Sol sends to Ted to personal to force him to spend the money on taxes instead of hiding it. But Ted tries to escape and his head hits. On the other hand, when Walter went to the lab, he realizes someone else is working. He goes to Jesse's house. And Walter says that Jesse wants to use you to take my place and kill me, but Jesse's still mad at Walter and leaves him. And then two men kidnap Walter. There was with Gus, meaning these two kidnap Walter, and then Gus tells Walter, "You're fired and don't go to Jesse whatever happens." But Walter knows that Jesse won't accept to kill Walter, and therefore Gus still hasn't killed Walter, so Walter explodes. At Saul's office, he says because his family are in danger, he needs someone who can help them disappear and escape. And he also requests from Saul. Saul is asked to call the Drug Enforcement Administration anonymously and warn them about Hank's danger. The person who helps people disappear demands a large sum of money. Walter runs to house, but he found nothing. He asks Skylar for the money as time runs out, so Skylar told him that she gave them to Ted. What a shame, what a shame. Walter starts scream and laugh. What a disgrace, like what a girl, yes.
Daughter of own!
Mary Skylar's sister called to inform her that the Drug Enforcement Administration had sent protection for them after receiving information that Hank was going to be killed because of your uncle, Walter. And when Walter gets over what he's in, he quickly sends Skylar and their son back to Hank, and Walter stays in the house waiting for Gus's men to come kill him. And Hank is then send his police friend searches the laundry where the lab is hidden, but he finds nothing because the lab is in a very secret place in the laundry. When Jesse went to Saul, he tells him everything that happened with Walter while simultaneously receiving a call from his girlfriend. Her son have mysterious illness and doctors don't know what is his problem. Jesse goes out to look for his pack of cigarettes but does not find the drug. He goes to Walter carrying a gun because he wants revenge on Walter, because he thought he killed his girlfriend's son as a revenge to take his place. Walter claims Jesse, and it's difficult because Jesse is mentally unstable and says that Gus manipulated Jesse into trying to make you kill me. He believes this is the explanations to this sensitive situation. Gus didn't send anyone to kill him all day, so Walter decided they will kill Gus together. And Walter starts making a bomb that was supposed to explode Gus's car. Gus discovers Walter's plan to kill him with a bomb. Walter then defuses the bomb and changes his plan before leaving. He meets Hector Salamanca, who was in the nursing home, and he says he can help him get revenge on Gus. On the same day, Hector says he has something to tell the Drug Enforcement Police, and he goes there but actually doesn't say anything. And when Gus finds out he went there, he goes to the nursing home where he is to find out what he told them. Hector. But he blows up the place with a bomb that Walter planted under his chair and detonated it using a bell in his hand. When the bomb explodes, Gus emerges with half his face blown off and dies. Did you know he would come out with half his face disfigured? And he returns to normal, of course, like this, right? And the news reaches Walter, who goes to Jesse's lab because he was imprisoned there and he kills Gus's man. They begin to burn the lab and laundry. And because they don't want to leave any evidence behind them, Hank was very close to get to them, and Walt calls his life and doesn't say anything but that he won, and then Wallert go home. There, Skylar tells him she fears of him as he has proven to be a dangerous person. On the other hand, Mike receives news of Gus's death and goes to kill Walter, but Jesse stops him and tells him that there is something very important he needs to hear, and Walter and Jesse say that Gus had put a camera on them in the lab and it was recording everything they were doing, and if that records reach the police, this will be a big problem. They decide to go to the lab to get rid of the laptop that has all the data, but the Drug Enforcement Agency had already have it. In fact, the laptop is in the possession of Mike, but when Walter asks for the location of the laptop, Jesse comes up with an idea. He proposes using a specialized magnet to destroy any device in close proximity. On the other hand, we see Uncle Ted after the accident that happened to him, and since then, Uncle Ted has been in a bad shape. Jesse, Walter, and Mike start doing the plan, and they wear masks and enter car with the magnet. The plan succeeds, and by the time the forces arrive, they have already left. The next day, we found that Uncle Walter, not Uncle Gus, poisoned the little boy as a play to manipulate Jesse, and Uncle Gus is finally gone. He performs a second cigar and visits Jesse's house. They are looking for a cigarette. There, Uncle Walter places the cigarette, manipulating Jesse into believing it was not the cigarette that poisoned the child, but we know Uncle Walter is the one who benefits from this. Jesse regrets it and cries because he was about to kill Walter. He did not know the truth that Walter was the son of
And in the same
day, Jesse and Walter go to Mike and they propose to him that he be their partner today because they are going to start a new job. But Mike suspects Walter that he is a ticking bomb ready to explode in everyone at any moment. And after a lot of talk, Mike accepts the partnership and goes to meet with them a woman named Lydia. And this is so she can bring them the materials they will work with, which is very coward. The investigation began with Mike. And because he was a former officer, he began by telling them that he was the head of security at the restaurant. Uncle Jack attempted to transfer Mike's money to his granddaughter's account, leaving Mike broke like Uncle Walter and Jesse. Meanwhile, Uncle Walter and Jesse met with Saul. They think of a safe place, they work on it again, and Mike gets a phone call from one of the people who work with Mike. But when he goes, he finds out there's a killer there who killed his men, and this man was sent by Lydia, the one Mike had met, to bring them the materials, and she agreed with the killer to kill all who were working, including Mike, because she is very afraid for herself. God, her mother, another killer, so Mike was almost killed. Then he went to Lydia's house and the boy was going to kill her, but your Uncle Mike will have mercy on her and leave her. In return, she continues to bring them the materials, and Mike calls Walter and says she is with them and wants to start, and they go to the soul that will be shown to them. The factory will remain a facade with its interior serving as a laboratory similar to the washer. But a better idea comes to Walter, which is to buy a house full of problems like pests. The owner hires a company to handle the pest problem. The workers cover and fumigate the house with poison, eliminating all pests. The house stays covered for days, and the workers also are with gang of Uncle Mike, so no one will scare them. Jesse sent his friend to bring the toolbox since it contains items inside. Mick deals with the people who work with him and tells them that they will deal with later and Jesse like ghosts and not speak to them under any circumstances, and if they ask for anything at any time, they must agree. The second day begins and Walter and Jesse start work again, and the work goes smoothly and perfectly. They're making a lot of money, but a significant portion is being taken from them, whether it goes to distributors or cars, meaning he's still profiting. Your Uncle Walter, a laundromat owner at Government Front, needs to buy a fancy car for himself and another for his son. However, Skylar persists in pursuing Walter, intensifying his mental stress until another chance. It's Walter's 51st birthday, it being a year since his birthday in the first episode of the first season. Meanwhile, Uncle Hank persists in his hunt for Heisenberg. That same day, a family gathering takes place at Walter's house. Skylar gets up and while talking, falls into the pool, attempting to drown herself. Walter quickly catches her before she dies. Please let her die, she is. Me. Anyway. Due to the mental pressure from Walter and the recent danger, Skylar decides to distance herself and her son from him and plans to escape. This reveals how much Skylar has been thinking about Walter. Anyway, it's family problems, none of our business. We have issues at work and not knowing how to handle the materials, so they go to Plane B. And on the same day, Uncle Jesse gives Walter a watch for his birthday party. Walter told Skylar that the person who brought me the gift had wanted to own me, but changed his mind about me, and you will do the same to me one day, considering you are a good and caring wife. The second day they start working on the plan, and the one who was basically presenting it was your Aunt Lydia, and they were focusing on the materials they wanted and taking them. Uncle Walter installs a surveillance device in Hank's office to stay informed about any new news. They starts the plane after a long time of planning. They carry out the execution and sit with the same house staff, including someone named T.O.D., who looks poor man. Think him well so that no one remains poor and gets caught in the end, and they start. The plan was for one of them to stop a car on the train tracks to stop the train as his car broke down. While the train is stopped when the two drivers assist him, the others will have pulled the materials in the tow and transported them by water, and the plane goes very smooth. I mean, it was until one of men comes, he means to say that he will pull the car with his car. But they still haven't finished, which is a problem, so they need to act quickly. Jesse hides under the train, preferring to sleep there. His secret is revealed, thank God. After the plan succeeds, Todd is happy until a small child appears and saw everything. In a spontaneous act, Todd shoots and kills the child. He would, and because of this, your Uncle Jesse gets upset. Not upset. Upset. I mean, because like we said, he really loves children. And one of them, he afterwards beats this guy up to his face. Oh boy, in this face. Except that your Uncle Todd is being punished by Mike, and your Uncle Mike warns him in a very serious tone. If he behaves again out of his mind, he will put a gun in his back. He said so. In fact, not from me, I mean. But your Uncle Jesse decides that he doesn't want to continue the job because of what happened. But anyway, your Uncle Mike agrees with him because it's the first time he tells Walter that he is actually being controlled. By drug fighting policy, they say they want to do the last job and withdraw, and Walter remains not pleased because he keeps coming back to it. And he goes to Jesse's house after he finds out that a major drug dealer wants to buy the stolen substance that they manufacture meth from for $5 million each, and Jesse is very pleased with this and asks Walter to retire after the sale. This way, we finish without danger or killing, and they keep the money from tomorrow. He insists that Walter refuses to leave this job because he is tired of it and is very attached to it. However, your Aunt Skylar and she hates Jesse, but your Uncle Walter changes the topic. Walter insisted that Jesse sit down to dinner with them, and he did. The conversation got heated between Jesse and Skylar, and Jesse sat between them like Mohammed Hannadi, Egyptian actor in one of his movies. The key is that he takes action, particularly when Skylar mentions her relationship with Ted in Jesse's presence to provoke him. Like, you remember? I remember, man, I was doing it. You were playing with Ted. You weren't playing with me. Mick is meeting Walter late at night. He determined to sell the stolen substance, but Walter stubbornly insists they finish the job. He decides to persuade Walter until morning. Except that he is tying Walter so that he does not get out of his place, he goes to damage things. But Walter manages to free himself, but Mick comes, who is very mad about Walter and wants to kill him, but they reach an agreement that Jesse and Mick accept their share, but Walter persists in the meth trade. They meet with a major dealer another day, and Walter's charisma secures a favorable deal. They have a certain percentage of the substance in exchange for the same money. And he says that he will work with him a lot. You understand that he will make the meth with his high quality and sell it to him. The dealer agrees with the sale and asks Walter who you are. Walter said, "You know who I am." Like what? Everyone in the country knows who the best person in the country is making meth, and he is the person who have the great relative to them. And he looks to the dealer, says with all confidence, "Say my name." The dealer responds to him, saying, "Heisenberg." After your Uncle Mike takes the money, he thinks about taking it to his granddaughter and getting rid of all his weapons, which is a very religious thing, and he decides to retire and shut down his mind. And when the police come and your Uncle Hank search his house and don't find anything to hold against him, Jesse says to Walter he wants to take the money and leave, but Walter tries to convince him to stay. However, Jesse refuses and decides not to continue with him. Walter refuses to give him money, okay? What if one money is missing? Jail, and what should I do? But Jesse says that even if he doesn't give me money, I will stop, I won't continue, so Walter has to let Todd, who helps him temporarily.
But in the other side,
the police arrive at the scene of Uncle Mike's crime, finding the stolen money. Mike has to leave, but before doing so, he meets Walter and argues with him. You had a boss and an expert to work at lab, and you were making a lot of money, but you insisted on being the boss, and this is what we all ended up with.
oh, son of a...
He didn't say that, but I blended in. Your Uncle Walter shot him and Mike fled in his car when he went behind him. And he found him waiting. The last problem is the people who were imprisoned and were following the Gus, and in my opinion, they must be killed before they say anything or confess. So Todd tells Walter that he has an uncle who can handle this situation, and he actually meets him and they agree to kill. These people, while they are in prison at the same time, and because the police can't catch up or protect the rest, they all end up killing each other at the same time. Even if they were scattered and the plan was successful and no one was left out, Hank was upset because of a joke that no one knows how to solve, and every time it takes a different meaning. After that, your Uncle Walter. He continues working until he becomes a professional, making a lot of money. A mountain of money, so much that they don't know how they did it. Aunt Skylar says that even buying 100 car washes wouldn't allow her to launder this money. Then the cancer returns to Coulter. It's time to retire, and he goes to Jesse and leaves him his money. Another family gathers, but do you think that story like that will have a happy ending? Of course not. Your Uncle Hank enter the bathroom and pull out anything he saw as a book. He found a message from Walter, tell him that he honored me to work with you, so he would link everything and discover that his cousin was the criminal who has confused him for a long time.
At the same time,
Uncle Hank will keep investigating and connecting the events. Jesse gives Saul the lawyer $5 million to find the child's killer, and the remaining money to Mike's granddaughter, and he will do so because of his guilty conscience. Saul informs Walter of Jesse's request. Walter brings the money to Jesse, but Jesse declines it. Because it's tainted with people's blood and he'd rather be poor, Walter tries to convince him that he's giving up his money. But Jesse accuses Walter of killing Mike, but of course Walter lies and continues to deny it. And that same night, Walter notices the notebook is missing. Hank took something, leading to discover the subject. Upon checking Hank's car, a tracking device is found as expected, confirming that he is the suspect. That same night, Jesse starts to throw money in the street. The next day, Walter goes to Hank's house and he's sitting in his garage investigating it, and Hank tries to act normal. Walter believes everything is fine, but there is an uncomfortable tension between them during their conversation. They both know what's going on, and when Walter leaves, he finds the tracking device, he finds it, he finds the tracking device, he finds it, he's finding what anyway, he finds the tracking device in his car. He confronts Hank asking, "Do you know what this is?" As the conversation intensifies, Hank shuts the garage door and strikes him. "Come here, son of... I'm above all that," and he confronts him with all the things that Walter has done to him. He was convinced that Gus or Jesse was responsible for these actions. He tells Walter he will imprison him, but currently lacks evidence. Walter denies it, swearing to God repeatedly, claiming his cancer has returned and he might die. He said that all of this is not true. And when the conversation gets heated between them, Walter indirectly threatens Hank, like when he sit down and tell him to believe in God is not from him. And Walter leaves, and the first thing he does is try to call Skylar, but her phone is busy. Hank had already called her, so Walter was furious, but he couldn't find her there. She goes to meet Hank after he asked her to, and he tells her casually that she doesn't know anything, and he asks her to testify, but she refuses to speak and asks for a lawyer. When Hank insists, Skylar gets very upset and leaves. On the other hand, Walter asks Saul to send people to hide his money. When they go, they are surprised that they are burying the money in the desert. You understand, this is not a scene from a crime series, and I don't know what. The important thing is they bury the money in a big barrel and they go to hide it in the desert. If anyone knows the place, let me know. On the same day, Marie meets Skylar about what Hank told her. Skylar remains silent out of fear, angering Marie, who slaps her in face.
Tell me. Oh.
Skylar refused to inform about Walter. In response, Marie took Skylar's daughter while she was walking, leading to an argument between them. Until he tells Hank to Marie that she will take care of the child during all this, Walter was in the desert. He put money until night at a location only he knows, with specific global positioning system coordinates, and he will go and leave the money there. And Skylar tells him that she didn't find anything for Hank, but suddenly he falls due to his fatigue and the effort he has made, and when he recovers, he realizes that Skylar had agreed with Hank. She demands he turn himself into the police, but first insists on keeping the money to provide for their children a good life. On the other hand, taught the dangerous nerve that they are going to die. Bane Todd, the drug dealer contracted to replace Walter, worked with him for a while and learned to act the meth. He will tell you about his uncle Jesse, who prefers to stay silent and not reveal anything that would implicate him in trouble. On the other hand, Walter will come. And Skylar had a plan that they record a confession video and then they go, Skylar meets Hank and Marie, and there they have the video that they recorded on it, and when they watch it, they get shocked. Walter claimed Hank was constructing a methamphetamine empire, exploiting Walter's chemistry expertise. Walter was devastated for some time due to his cancer diagnosis. And indeed, Hank was particularly shocked when he saw it, understanding the profits they were making, and that Hank was a partner in the crime, and because of a dispute that occurred between them. Hank said, What happened? What happened? Hank came and killed Gus, and your uncle Walter continues to direct accusations at Hank. For instance, he'll claim that the bruise on his face is from Hank hitting him when he tried to quit the job. You know, Hank, that son of E. And Marie is really upset about what they saw, but on the other side, Walter faces Jesse and tells him what's the danger they're in. But Jesse tells him that he didn't say anything when he realized with him, and Jesse decides that he will distance himself from his entire life and start a new life with a new page. Through the person who escapes the people with Saul and actually did the procedures with Saul, and the man is supposed to take this place away from him. Jesse discovers that Walter is deceiving him about poisoning the child. Saul gets hit because he is the one who stole the poisoned cigarette. And Jesse goes to his uncle Walter's house, but when Walter goes to the house after Saul tells him what Jesse wants to do, he found the house and finds it safe but filled with gasoline. People arrive to clean it up. Do you understand? They cleaned his uncle's house. Walter searched for Jesse with Saul. In reality, when Jesse left to fire the house, Hank entered, beat him out. Hank takes Jesse home, leaves him there, and the next day after Jesse leaves, Hank records a video detailing everything, with Jesse talking about it in detail. But it's not enough because of physical evidence is insufficient to support him. But he sends a message to Jesse about what he is facing, so Hank tells Jesse that he will put a tracking device on him and go talk to Walter and catch him in the talk. Jesse believes Walter intends to kill him, but Hank insists Jesse goes, secretly placing a tracking device on him. Jesse goes to meet Walter. But there Jesse panics and calls Walter from a distance to threaten him, and Hank gets really upset because of what he's putting his nephew through. But on the other hand, Walter calls Todd to say that he needs his uncle for a big job. And as for Jesse, he tells Hank that Walter is too smart to leave any evidence behind him in one place. There is one evidence. It was the place of the money, and the only person who knew about this money remains to be your Uncle Saul, so Hank goes to Saul Helper. He confronts him, revealing they've tracked Walter's phone. He wants to kill him and shows him a fake photo of Jesse's death. Realizing he's in danger, he's terrified and agrees to assist, disclosing everything. He said that Walter's money is buried in the desert. Uncle Walter talks with Uncle Todd and Jack. He wants to kill Jesse, but quickly, so Jesse doesn't suffer anymore. He understands he's going to die, and Jack agrees to kill Jesse, but in return, Walter has to work for them again because Todd can't produce the same quality as Uncle Walter. So Walter says he'll make one batch, but after Jesse is killed. Walter receives a fake picture of his money in the desert as a hoax, but Walter believes and go with his car at the location. At the same time that Jesse is with Walter, a line that reveals nothing until he arrives, and behold, he's in his money. He involves Walter in the conversation, and Walter nervously says many things. When he arrives, he finds the place untouched. Jesse didn't get to the money, and no love for this technology, but he sees an Arab coming from afar, so he quickly contacts Jack to come and kill Jesse, but Uncle Walter sees that he has arrived and Hank is nearby, so he quickly contacts Jack to cancel, and Walter surrenders and gets arrested and becomes very upset with Jesse, and all he thinks is that he wants to get rid of him. After Walter enters the car, Uncle Hank calls Marie and informs her of Walter's arrest. But the problem is the arrival of Jack and his gang to the place despite Walter's cancellation with them, and Uncle Walter shouts at Hank to warn him. But Hank is a stubborn mule. He has his pride and he won't listen. God knows the gang will easily take him down. And Uncle Hank holds his ground, so Uncle Walter pleads with Jack not to kill Hank, but Jack decides to kill him once he finds out he's from the Drug Enforcement Agency. Uncle Walter continues to negotiate, saying he has $80 million buried. Take it all and leave. But despite this, Uncle Jack decides to kill Hank. Naturally, Uncle Walter collapses, and Jack brings a shovel to dig up the money he killed for. He digs up the money and leaves the hole. Walter and his wife receive the second payment of $10 million. He accepts it, but finds the rest of the situation absurd and considers it a joke. Jesse has disappeared. Walter claims to have seen him hiding under a car, prompting a search for Jesse at that location. And before they catch him, Todd says they could use Jesse by making him work for them indefinitely. You understand they're replacing him, and before taking Jesse, Walter confesses to Jesse and says he saw Jane. You understand, you're sure, Jane. The girl that your Uncle Jesse loved at first. I mean, your Uncle Walter saw her when she was overdosing on drugs and caused her death in front of him, and he could have saved her, you understand, but he let her die. And when Jesse hears this, of course, he gets emotionally upset. And he keeps crying the rest of the time while Walter gets in his car and he starts the engine and drives off into the desert, and he buys 6 of his own cars and drives home. Skyler had informed the police that Hank arrested Walter. Meanwhile, Jack was on the other side. Jesse, confined to a cage, lives solely to serve his captors. After enduring bizarre torture, he returns to his prison. Even the act of extinguishing a cigarette betrays his unnatural desires. Skyler discovers the truth about her father's arrest, causing her to become very upset as she doubts he will come back home. He should forgive your uncle, and Walter's behavior is unusual. Will he inquire about your uncle's location? She thinks he killed Hank because he was arrested by Hank, but he lacks time. I believe it's not your uncle's time. He should favor your Uncle Walter. And he asks them to leave now, but Skyler has finally decided to stay. I have finished. She retrieves a kitchen knife and initiates a fight, separating people to inflict harm. She attempts to kill Walter, but he takes the knife from her hand in front of others. Junior arrives, takes Walter away, and calls the police to report his father threatening and fleeing with his daughter. In a hurry, Skyler finds herself behind a car and starts to degrade, but he walks away and Skyler reports. He degrades Uncle Walter while the police listen, even admitting to killing Hank to threaten Skyler. However, he leaves his daughter at the fire station with the home address to return her. He then goes to a person who will hide him with a new identity and life, and Saul Goodman will join him. And every plan is made. Despite everything his family did to him, he must get his money to his wife and son. He reaches his uncle, attains a new identity and life, and leaves Walter behind in his house. He's supposed to not get thirsty no matter what happens. And Jesse tries once to escape from the cage they've trapped him in, but he holds on and gets beaten, and as a result, your Aunt Andrea, his lover, is killed, Jesse. God silence my friends, and days and months passed. His hair turned white, signaling his progression in his new life, but he is actually suffocating from loneliness. To the extent that he is exposing the man who brings him $10,000 in exchange for preferring to spend 1 hour with him. But your money is so much more than I am, my friends, in such a situation, and when he tries so hard, he would call his son at school, telling him he is a monster. His son would respond using his own power. Oh Lord, die, you old woman. When the police arrive at Walter's location, he will have already left in a car to Gretchen's house. You understand that you and Elliot are his friends and beneficiaries from the first part. And he will leave them the money and tell them to give it to his family as donations and grants for their life. He tells them they are like two naive fishermen, easily fooled when they fulfill his requests. Scared, they agree, and later discover they are not actually fishermen or anything else he claimed. Jesse and Walter gave them money before because they are old friends. They stand before the house, awaiting the police. The forces knock, and Walter enters his old, destroyed home, abandoned by his family. He uses the hidden poison and meets Todd and Lydia to inform them of the agreement. Before leaving, he poisons Lydia's drink. Walter tests his weapon in the desert, then visits his wife to bid her a final farewell. He leaves her a note with the location and asks her to inform the police that he is at this location after he leaves, and for the first time Walter admits the truth, meaning he did all this not just for his family. But he liked the subject and went to Jack's to tell him about Todd's agreement. Jack asked him to see Jesse, and when Walter first saw Jesse, he throws himself on him and beats him, but to his surprise, he had put a weapon in the trunk of the car and connected it to the keys. Everyone arrives except for Todd. Jesse, who has been trying to kill Walter, understands his thoughts. Walter asks Jesse to kill him, but Jesse tells him to do it himself and walks away, leaving them alone for the last time. Jesse takes the car and escapes, finally free. As for Walter, he gets shot by the weapon, he collapses in the meth lab while the police are coming, and Walter dies in the only place he ever felt comfortable in his life, which is the drug lab. And that's how it's done.